Hello and welcome to Chat DPS, where we are discussing an article published on LinkedIn this week by Will Kulozowski, in which he exposes the difficult conversations being held with CISOs and their boards. Next, we'll explore an article inspired by the BBC in the Independent newspaper about Marks and Spencers before turning attention to work at Interpol have been busy doing behind the scenes. Really interesting week. So, Adam, this is an interesting one that we're starting off with today, the board conversation, yeah? As a CISO yourself, I mean, this has got to be a sort of like a drastic sort of like call to arms, really. So what Will Klusovsky is actually saying, get my teeth around that, do you want a real budget, or do I just add 30% so you can cut it later? This is what he's suggesting is going on in almost every single boardroom. Strategic. What he's suggesting is that you need to create strategic programs that the board actually understands. So, I mean, I suppose every senior manager has been through, that conversation training with the board around, sort of like, what is it that we're trying to achieve? Where are we going? What are we doing? He's suggesting that, it's not about vulnerability scanning anymore. It's about vulnerability management program. It ensures that our systems stay up so that when we work and process sales, so we can, this is like the stuff that the board wants to hear. It's not about log management, SIEM, EDR, or managed services. It's about a security monitoring program, and it catches bad activity before it can get to you. And it's not a GRC tool any longer, or a TPRM tool, or a risk management framework. It's a risk management program, and it makes sure that we don't get fined and that our partners' screw-ups don't hurt us. Is this all ringing true to you? Is this something that you go, yeah, I've seen this?
100%, 100%. And in a lot of boards that I advise externally as well, this happens a lot. I would go a step further from what Will has said here, and the advice that I have given to CISOs in the past has been centered around making sure that we align with strategic outcomes for the business. So every single thing that we do is set to a strategic outcome and shows how it's a pillar to success for that outcome. And then everyone gets behind it from the board, because he said a few things which were really, really good in that. He used a Monty Python joke of "we already have one of those," and I love that because one, it shows we failed to explain what we're doing from that perspective, but two, it actually shows how we haven't propositioned how security can be that business advantage and how it can get us to our strategic goals, and we've been thinking too low on the stack. It's like, I need another firewall, as opposed to, we're building out a service, and this is one of the keys to success, so we don't end up like Optus.
Yeah, yeah, I liked that Monty Python thing myself. It was so French. I mean, it was
Very
so
much so.
brilliant, so very French. I mean, it just cut across so many things. Sort of. Don't we already have one of those?
Uh,
Yep.
100%, 100%. And I will say one thing that Will nailed on was the budget dance. It's very
Yeah.
frustrating. So a lot of the time, what happens is a CISO, or even a CIO, just technology in general, will lay some fat, 30%, 20%, whatever it happens to be. Because what happens is, when they don't do that, they get their budget back minus 10% or minus 20% anyway, right?
Yeah.
So it's just become this game that goes through, and I'd say I'll say something that will polarize people. I'll say real CISOs, so real educated and seasoned CISOs, they don't ask for budget. They build trust and show how security fuels businesses, and that's how you get your budget and how you get activities done.
That's really insightful, and hopefully that goes to some of those board members that are affected, and to some of those CISOs as well. Moving on, there's been a real hotbed of activity around Marks and Spencers over the recent few weeks, and I got called out by somebody online at one point, and yeah, it was kind of it all got very interesting around what was going on. But Marks and Spencers now are predicted to take a £300 million hit to profits after the cyber attack in April. And obviously that actually goes into between they're talking about a hit on capital market, or the market capitalization of the company of between
Yep.
$1 and $1.4 billion, a pound, dollars, sorry,
Yeah,
depending upon
dollars. Yeah.
who you speak to at any given moment in time. The hackers reportedly sent an abusive email to the retailer's boss gloating about the hack and demanding ransom payment. The email, seen and reported by the BBC, says, "We have marched the ways from China all the way to the UK and have mercilessly raped your company and encrypted all the servers. The dragon wants to speak to you, so please head over to our darknet website." It sounds like this is just going to be the story that runs and runs, because I still don't think Marks and Spencers are completely on top of the losses at this moment in time. I've received a couple of emails about this from them myself, so it's kind of interesting story, right?
Yeah, this one's really, really interesting. And what I'll say about this is it wasn't just a breach. So this is kind of one of the first times that a cyber attack has become an actual brand assault. So, like
Yeah,
taunting the CEO is psychological warfare when it comes to these type of things. It's really, really interesting. I will say there's a resilience issue. So, like 3 weeks to notify customers, probably not the best look. And so this is like reputational risk on steroids, right? Like and that's where these losses are coming from. And it's clear that they've never run a tabletop exercise or thought about these things in the past, because there would have been way less panic and much more precision in the process if they had have. It's just good hygiene.
yeah. I mean, those plans, sort of or crisis management plans, I suppose, because they're not just they're not cyber plans.
No,
They're
it's
crisis
crisis. Yeah.
management plans. Really, goes much broader, because you can get the whole head office could be put up in flames or whatever. But I mean, having these things in place and doing the tabletop, it takes expertise to be able to run them, because the amount of scenarios that we've discussed with people like Jonathan Hemus in the past, where
Yeah.
a crisis management expert who runs these things with large end of town customers and high profile organizations every single week, and it's the more detail you can get into these plans, the better it is. So
Agreed, agreed. And it's just like cyber isn't about encryption anymore. It's actually fully about trust. And the problem with trust is it completely evaporates in silence. And
yeah.
so a lot of these bigger breaches, the time in which it takes to get a response can really hurt you.
Right. Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, so that the efficiency of movement in those things is, we know where we're going, we know what we're doing, we're not making decisions on the fly, we're doing things right now, we've got a plan, we're going to carry it out. Um
100%. Like
yeah,
if you look at Target, what happened with Target as opposed to Marks and Spencer's, Targets were out like 2 days later, and they controlled the narrative and they spoke
yeah,
about it. They gave updates proactively. And what happened with them, and the reason why we can't use them as an example of how bad it is to get a cyber attack, is their revenue went up after the cyber attack. Because
Russ.
interestingly enough, everyone stopped using online buying. But as you know, if you go into the stores, you have emotional buys, right? Oh, I like this, I'll grab it. So their sales actually went up, but the percentage between online sales and legitimate in store sales just completely changed.
Right. Okay. Well, that one's going to play out, and I'm sure there'll be a topic of conversation again in the not too distant future. The
Yeah.
final story that we've got this week is about Interpol, and there's a big story over the weekend about the fact that it dismantled a 20,000 plus malicious IPs that were linked with 69 malware variants in something called Operation Secure. And this is from the Hacker News, so fairly reliable source. Interpol has announced the dismantling of the 20,000 malicious IP addresses or domains that have been linked to 69 information stealing malware variants. The joint action, codenamed Operation Secure, took place between January and April 2025 and involved law enforcement agencies from 26 countries to identify servers, map physical networks, and execute targeted takedowns. This is a massive story, right? Because there's been a lot of good that's been done, and I understand that you've been hearing more information about this since the release of this story, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I'll call this a cyber SWAT type
Oh,
thing,
what a
right? This
great
is a
name!
really interesting piece of work, and just logistically is an amazing undertaking for Interpol and Five Eyes as a whole to be able to do this. Um, but yeah, so there's been 32 arrests, and it's almost 69, I believe, malware strains have been removed. And yeah, over 20,000 malicious IP addresses have been completely taken down, including a marketplace, which is cool. So it's definitely a win, but I will say that it really only scratches the surface of like the global malware iceberg, if you will.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because I mean, it's a massive win. 32 people arrested, but as you say, I mean, there are probably thousands, if not tens of thousands, of people that are actually active in the marketplace at this moment in time. A massive win, nevertheless. Let's not take anything away from the law enforcement and the detection piece. I mean, I think that what they've done is magnificent. I'd just like to think that there was more of it going on. I'm sure there is.
I agree, and I think we need way more operations like this, and to be faster because the adversaries aren't waiting. There was one big victory in this though. So over 200,000 victims of these different malware groups and cybercrime cartels were actually notified about what had happened and that the information was found and that type of thing. So it was pretty big for it, and it actually shows accountability from Interpol to be able to go back to people that have been affected by these criminal enterprises ultimately.
What a great news story to finish off on this afternoon, Adam. That is wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us
Thank
again,
you for having me.
and for the input and the expertise and the overview. Wonderful stuff. That was Chat DPS for this week. Thank you very much for joining us.
Take care all.